It's been 4 years, and the American people are tired. After a humiliating defeat in Iran, the US sought out easier targets, hoping to patch up its wounded pride. As the empire began to crumble, it lashed out in desperation. Cuba, Greenland, Turkey, Canada, all paid the price. Due to the perpetual state of total war the US found itself in, the 2028 elections were suspended. So naturally, a period of insurrection followed suit.
Decided the erection.
After a year of chaos and violence in the once peaceful streets of Chicago, LA, Philadelphia, Jackson, Mississippi, the war was over. Brandon Herrera rose above the rest as the new supreme leader of America. And as such, the reign of the unsub-occupied government began. He was selected on the idea that America shouldn't be involved in all these wars that didn't benefit us. He sought to bring home the troops who had been deployed in every corner of the globe. Once they made it home, the supreme leader decided it was time to regroup, rearm, reorganize, and go after our true enemy, the one nation responsible for all the world's pain and suffering: India.
No! Do not invade! Do not invade!
Overnight, his approval ratings soared past 100%. Although the American people were tired, they had one more good fight in them. Re-enlistment skyrocketed. Disabled vets begged to come back. "Please, God, let me smoke those little butter chicken bastards before I leave this earth," said one veteran who lost every limb in Iran. Secretary of War Angry Cops initiated the development of a new camo pattern, Trash Cam, to fit the new environment. The American people were aware of the risks. AT&T and Microsoft customer service would be down, but it was short-term pain for long-term gain.
Short-term pain
for the long-term gain.
So here we are, 2030, at the beginning of Operation Epic Curry. Many of the boys have plenty of combat experience fighting this enemy from the 2027 Canadian-American War. But now, we're on their turf, their real turf.
The nation of India is only 2 weeks away from developing a toilet.
This is a military operation! It's not a war!
Today's Hammy product showcase are his his cheek risers, which he offers for over a dozen stocks with 5 different heights available to accommodate various optic heights. The risers provide an improved cheek weld and come in all your favorite colors. No hardware is required to start running them, simply throw them onto your stock or pistol brace and you're ready to go. The best part is they fit into every budget, hovering around $30, so check the link and use code ESPO to save 10%. Next, we have to thank Guard Dog Security for also sponsoring the video. Guard Dog Security is a personal safety company dedicated to making everyday protection simple, effective, and accessible. Today we have their Fireball Mini, a tiny 50 caliber pepper launcher capable of firing up to 50 feet while being easy to conceal and access quickly. It features a dual shot chamber which lets you fire twice before having to reload. Although capable of firing up to 50 feet, within 30 is a more realistic effective range. Its simple air-powered mechanism provides reliable performance without overcomplicating the system. Pepper and chalk rounds are available so you can safely practice and build confidence before relying on it in an emergency. Thank you, Guard Dog Security. Now, let's get to the video.
So a question you'll often see that's asked all across the community, online. Somebody will say, hey, I'm getting into guns. I'd like to buy my first AR-15. What's a good budget rifle that I can get? And this is often met by the high karma chud who goes in and says, if your budget's $3,000, spend $500 on the rifle, $500 on attachments, and $2,000 on ammo and training. Thank me later. And in the replies of that, you'll all have a bunch of people like,
This guy knows what he's talking about.
or,
Wow, I wish somebody would have given me that advice when I was getting into it.
and it's almost become like this non-opinion, if you ask me, because it's more of a creed that everybody echoes and that is uttered by many, but practiced by few. I don't think that somebody who's getting into this for the first time will read that and go,
Wow, I was gonna buy this $3,000 rifle, but you know what? He's right. I'm gonna buy a PSA and all the ammo, and I'm gonna get really good.
like, that's just not happening. That's not how the American consumer is. That's not how most people are. Maybe there's a handful of people that do that. Maybe there's somebody who's gonna comment and go,
Well, I did that. Excuse me, I did that and I got really good.
okay, good for you, but I don't think that that is the majority of people. Look at how Americans consume things. When people get into hobbies, they usually go balls to the wall, they spend a bunch of money up front, and then none of the skill is there. That's just what happens. So I think this piece of advice almost falls on deaf ears for the most part. Those that are willing to take that advice, good on you, of course, but I just don't think that it's so irrelevant to like the average consumer that it's almost not even worth saying anymore. And I'm not saying it's a bad piece of advice. People are going to be offended and say, "How dare you?" Yeah, I know. What's the phrase? It's the Indian, not the curry, right? Whatever it is. I know that you can get a cheap rifle so long as it functions. You can put a lot of ammo and training in, and you can get really good. That's something that is learned, I think. It's like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. The person that's first getting into guns, you kind of just got to let the cringe happen, in my opinion. They're not going to have the same mindset about preparedness and shooting and everything that you have now. You're somebody who has 10 years of shooting experience. Maybe they're a little bit scared about the economy or whatever the case is. Many situations that are being monitored that they could be afraid of, and maybe they're going to get a gun. And maybe they're just not mature enough to hear that piece of good advice. So maybe we have to modify how we're talking to like newbies and stuff. You know, you tell somebody this advice, okay, you spend $500 on your cheap rifle. They're gonna go to get a cheap gun, and then they're gonna think of themselves like, well, I saved so much money. Like, I was gonna spend $3,000, but until they talked me down into it. So now I got all this money, okay, cool. They buy this gun, they buy a little bit of ammo, they disregard completely the whole ammo magazine training thing you said about the 2K. So then they go get a bunch of attachments, they start setting it up, they get a red dot, they get a light, they get a sling, right? Good on them for that. But then they see a video on YouTube that has an LPVO, and then they go, ooh, that's kind of cool. So then they go get an LPVO, and then they're like, ooh, maybe I should get a suppressor, and they start thinking about that a little bit. They start to mess around so much with attachments and setting their gun up, and they haven't done any of that stuff you advise them about the ammo and training. You know, time goes on, and now they take the red dot off their rifle, and they put the LPVO on, and they got this extra red dot sitting around, and then the MLK Day PSA sale is going on, but then they see a 10.3 AR-15 on sale, stuff that's always on sale in PSA. PSA is, I've shopped at PSA for about 8 years now. They've had a sale every week of the year, but I digress. Anyway, they see a kit for cheap, they go and they pick it up, and now they got 2 rifles. Oh, I gotta put that red that I took off my main rifle on this gun, and then before you know it, they've got multiple AR-15s. They haven't shot very much of either of them, but they're decked out a whole bunch. You know, that's just how it goes. And people have to go through that cringe and then realize, like, man, maybe did I waste money? Then they start to shoot more. Then they start to go to the range. They meet a buddy. They link up. Okay, let's go to training. They start seeing competition. Oh, let's go to a competition. Okay, maybe I like this kind of thing. And then they learn that way by experience. That's why I kind of think that a piece of advice falls on deaf ears. And I have a personal reservation against recommending like super cheap brands, simply because I have this fear that I'll recommend somebody. I think about a couple people in my life that don't have guns, but I've like kind of teased, like, hey, you should get a gun, like, you know, I can help you like shop for one or whatever the case. You know, I have this fear of like telling them, hey, go pick up this brand of gun. They go pick up a $400 AR. The thing fails on them, the gas block walks off, something bad happens, and they don't have the facilities, they don't have the know-how how to fix it. So then they kind of have this bad taste in their mouth and this loss of confidence in the platform or in firearms in general. Then they kind of take your piece of advice like it was garbage, and they think you're an idiot. So it's like this whole thing, right? But I also think that there's like this race to the bottom that a lot of people have. They want to take pride in having the cheapest thing imaginable. It's like a flex to be super broke, you know what I mean? And I think that it's okay to have nice stuff. And a lot of people that own nice stuff learned that nice stuff doesn't fail as often as cheap. Maybe they've had failures on certain guns. Maybe they have experienced that PSA gas block walking off. You know, I know in my small group of friends, my circle, I know a couple people with PSA rifles in real life. I know these people. And both of them have had issues, pretty critical issues with PSA guns. So one had his gas block walk off, and then the other had his castle nut come off. It didn't come off so much that the base plate walked out, but it was, you know, you could see a little spring sticking out and stuff, and he was like, he didn't know how to, he doesn't build ARs or anything like that, but he was like, I don't know how to fix this, like, what do I do? And I explained to him kind of what was going on, and I told him essentially just push that thing in and screw it back on, and you're gonna have to stake it, is essentially what, and he kind of lost confidence in that particular firearm. So I know that there's a lot of the PSA fanboys, they come for you if you talk bad about them at all, about PSA at all. But you have to understand, in this world, you can like certain things about a company and dislike other things. You know, in society, we've kind of reached this all or nothing all the time, these conditions of like, you're either 100% in support or you're 100% against. And that's not how real people operate. That's not like real opinions that people have. I like PSA. This is a PSA lower, which I'm going to talk about this here in a little bit. I like some of the PSA stuff.
I like some of the PSA products. What the frick does she know about 5.56 AKs?
Am I going to trust an upper for my end of the world gun? You know, probably not. I want to go with a company that has a repeatable, consistent, good quality to them, if that makes sense. Every company has issues. BCM had issues with like some barrels a while back. Geisley, Daniel, you name it. You name a good quality manufacturer and you type in issues, you'll probably see an issue that these companies have had, because QC things it happens, right? The rate at which that happens though decreases the better quality rifles and equipment, things in general that you buy. There's usually like really expensive where you're overpaying, there's too cheap where you're selling yourself short, and there's kind of this median, there's like this median area that's like a pretty good. And that's where I think companies like Geisley, BCM kind of sit, is in this mid-range, like they occasionally may have a QC issue here and there, but you know, they're good companies, reputable. That kind of thing. And of course, as warfare develops, and you know, people often talk about this preparedness and this SHTF if it ever came here to the United States. And if you have like a PSA rifle and it works and it's built well, because those do exist, you can, you know, there's a lot of people that have PSA rifles that function just fine. Think of like some of the wars around the world right now. Are any of those people, did they die because they had a PSA versus a Geisley? You know, I don't think that there's like a whole lot of difference there, you know what I mean? Because there's so many other aspects to, like Ukraine, for example, drones, artillery, tanks, you know, all that kind of stuff that's going on. It's not like, oh, I would have lived, this drone wouldn't have killed me if I had a BCM upper instead of a PSA. So I would imagine a similar situation would be like that here in the United States, where it's like, oh, I would have lived, but I got a PSA instead. You know, probably not the case, so long as the rifles are built well. But that's enough ranting about that. What is this gun? I don't really want to like break down like too much, just like the parts build, because we've done parts builds so many times, and I'd rather talk a little bit more about the reasoning behind the components chosen. So BCM upper with a BCM bolt carrier group, 14.5-inch barrel. I got a suppressor out front, pretty budget suppressor, you know, light optic sling, the whole 9 yards. Why this optic? I chose an LPVO simply because I'd like to have a little bit more distance. Now this is a very budget LPVO. This is a Vortex Strike Eagle. If I had to like take this rifle to war or whatever the case, I'm not saying I'm like about that life, whatever, like I'm not a warrior or whatever, but if I had to take this for an extended time, I would be a little bit self-conscious, because not because like of the brand name, but because the quality. Is it going to last? Is it going to be durable? I don't know those answers yet. My opinion is kind of still, you know, in limbo for this optic. It's fun. But it was like $200 on PSA's website, so I was like, I'm going to grab this Strike Eagle, throw it on this, and see if I like it or not, and then maybe invest in something a little bit better later on if the world allows us to do that. But I have this on here because I want to be able to identify things a little bit further away. It just helps with the magnification. Is just nice. It's just really nice to have. So you're able to identify things a little bit further away and still be able to go and shoot close on 1X. Now this particular optic is kind of weird to me. I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not very well versed in a lot of LPVOs. At certain distances, I almost feel like kind of cross-eyed when I'm like looking at it. You really have to like focus on your target, and I noticed it kind of like clears up. The eye box is kind of mid as it is on this gun. I'll find myself like closing my eye a lot more, especially out in the woods. It's so easy to like get your eyes confused with how everything blends in, that I often do find myself kind of closing an eye to like re-get my sight picture, because like right now I'm looking at the side of my house and it's very easy to just keep both eyes open. But if I was shooting at something in the woods, I feel like I would probably have to close an eye more just so I could see it and make it out a little bit better and not confuse myself, because everything just blends in, you know what I mean? So that's why I got the LPVO on there. I think that The LPVOs are cool. I'd like to get obviously like a Vortex or Razor or something like that. I can totally see why LPVOs are the standard. And if you look at like special operator guys around the world, you see a lot of like Night Force attackers and stuff, especially like on Green Berets, do like the URGI type stuff. And with how cheap, you know, Primary Arms, Vortex, a lot of these offerings are, it doesn't hurt to at least try it out and see what you think. And that's kind of what I'm doing here with this. Of course, we got the Hemi kill flash on front. I know I made a video a while back like talking crap about kill flashes, but if there was a sort of setup that I would have a kill flash on, it'd be like where I have a, you know, makeshift ghillie, whatever, and you know, like the boonie and stuff. Like if I'm trying to hide in the woods, I probably would throw a kill flash on here. So you can see that I got that there. What else? So PSA lower. Back in the day, it used to be the Aero lower and the BCM upper. Aero Precision is probably weeks away from closing down permanently. We'll all see that thank you message on social media with a big, you know, thank you up top, and then a whole paragraph of text saying, we love our customers. We served you for however many years. Thanks for the support, as they close down their doors permanently because Aero's gone down the toilet, unfortunately. So PSA is kind of the budget. They're the cheapest lowers right now you can get. Anderson doesn't exist anymore. So it's gonna be a PSA lower if you're going for like a super budget build. And as so long as you build it, which I do, I think that there's a lot of value there. Not all lowers are treated the same. So talking to Hammy, when he designed these magwells, because I have a Hammy magwell on here, when he was designing those magwells, he probably bought like a dozen lowers just to get a magwell for each kind of one. So he bought BCM lowers, Daniel lowers, LMT, all this stuff, just so he could measure it, because the tolerances are so different on lowers. Some lowers will, you know, release mags easily. Some will be a little bit more stiff. There's a lot of different tolerances. So I know that a lower is a lower. That's something that people have often said. There are different specs to them as well. Most of the specs don't matter enough for it to affect the performance of the gun. There are some extreme cases where basically, you know, let's say this is your lower and this is your upper. The lower can be so misaligned that it almost misaligns your upper and lower, and that can cause malfunctions with the gun. That's a very extreme case. That's not within the tolerances. I don't imagine that would be like one end of the spectrum, but there are instances where a lower can be bad like that, but most lowers are gonna be fine. It's just the markings that people get hung up on, fit and finish and all that. It's kind of like, reminds me of like the Ukraine meme or whatever, where it's like a picture of a trench, and it's like, oh no, my anodizing doesn't match, or, you know, there's too much play in my upper and lower. Like there are certain combinations that lock up a lot better. But if the lower works, the lower works. You know, I've chosen a LaRue MBT trigger in here. Why a semi-automatic trigger? Why not an FRT? Why not a super safety? I want to have a reliable semi-automatic trigger. FRTs, super safeties, you know, I don't know what I don't know about those as far as durability, long-term usage. I have a couple cassette style and they've performed fine, but you know, I just don't know the durability on those, especially if it's like certain kinds of steel. I think it's like a 6160. It's like, how's the durability on that? Well, I read a lot of stuff online about those super safeties like Hoffman styles breaking. Sometimes getting those things to run initially is kind of finicky. And the last thing I'd want to do in an emergency situation is have a trigger system that is finicky. I'd rather go with something traditional, maybe even mil-spec for a duty capacity. So that's why the LaRue is in there. The magwell, so the magwells are kind of big right now. I chose this one because it's a budget magwell. I chose it because Hammy gave it to me for free. He's a sponsor of the video. But the magwells are budget. They're like 20 bucks. And the magwell is kind of big now. I think people are realizing, like night vision, low light, if you're not looking at your gun, it's very easy to just like, I'm not looking. You can just like get in there easily. So the magwells are cool. It's so light. It's just, why not have it? There is a little bit of shilling, obviously, but I do genuinely like the magwell. Otherwise, it wouldn't be on this gun. What else? You know, budget light. You know, often the Streamlight ProTech is mentioned. I had one that flickered. Hammy had one that flickered. So I tend not to go with that one. Whatever. I'm just not a big fan, I guess. I think they're kind of ugly too, but that really doesn't matter. Again, the drone's not going to care if you have a Streamlight or a Surefire. Just get something that works and that's reliable. It's just a little eBay special Surefire light I threw on here with the Hammy caps. I like the caps a lot because if it has an accidental discharge, whatever the case, it's not going to be seen because of this cap on here. And this is actually not 3D printed. This is whatever the nice material is. I'm going to throw it in post because I'm stupid. The butt hurts. I like having that on there, especially for reflection reasons and all that. Having that little thing on there is cool. And then suppressors. So suppressors I can consider a budget option or a budget item now because you have offerings like the Polonium and many others new companies have hit the market with budget suppressors. You can get them for sub 4 at this point. You know, there's plenty of options out there, and there's no reason not to have one. So I definitely encourage the use of them for the reasons of liberty and signature reduction, and just to preserve your own hearing. Those, you know, that's a nice feature as well. So this is just a very basic little video on what is possible on a budget, so to speak. So, you know, putting the parts where it matters. What's the parts that really matter? Obviously, the optic matters. So having this strike eagle on here, I don't feel great about it, but the verdict is still out on it. Having a used Surefire, I really like the used market. Going out and getting used stuff is should be encouraged more. You should be going on TaxSwap and eBay and looking for lights and stuff. There's a lot of high quality stuff that can be found on those websites at you know, half the cost, maybe 2/3 of the cost. And then of course choosing a good bolt carrier group and upper and all that. You guys already know that. Many of you already know that. Kind of preaching to the choir here on this. I really just want to do like the Indian skit and then just yap about how I set this gun up and do like a little bit of a recce LARP. So that's what we're doing out here today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And what's my conclusion? So what's my answer to that Reddit question of, I'm trying to get a budget gun. What do I get? Get what your heart desires, all right? You can be responsible, get your ammo and stuff like that, but it's gonna probably fall on deaf ears. Get what you think is cool, all right? Learn how to shoot it. But I'm of the opinion almost that, maybe this sounds bad to people, you should get a cool gun. Because if you have a cool gun, then it's gonna make you wanna go to the range more. And when you go to the range more, you're gonna shoot more. Of course, high volume of rounds doesn't necessarily mean good quality training, but I think that you could potentially be put on that pipeline of, okay, this gun's really cool. This is a clone of a URGI. And then you go out. If you can't tell what gun is on my mind, it's the URGI. But you go out and you're like, I'm gonna go shoot this thing. You shoot it, like, this is really cool. I wanna shoot this thing more. You meet friends, you go out, you shoot together, and they're like, oh wow, that Ergy's really cool. You're like, yeah, it is. And then you hear a buddy who's like, hey, you know, I'm taking a class, and you go, okay, let me go take a class. And you go take a class. And before you know it, you become more responsible about your time, your money, all that kind of thing. And you start to take your training more seriously. And it kind of all started because you got a cool gun. If you got something really boring and ugly, you'd be like, oh yeah, it's fine, it's responsible, it's whatever, I don't really care about it. You might not shoot as much. So whether it's a clone, which I'm big on the clone stuff, you know, you're cloning a gun from a video game and then that's the gun you go out and you shoot a lot. Hey, that's pretty cool. I think that works because, you know, there's such a wide group of people, of demographics of people that buy these guns. You can't always preach this message of responsibility to the masses because 80–90% of people are just never going to listen to you. But when you are encouraging people to go out and get guns, you are going to get that percentage of people that are responsible and that go on to become really proficient and really good shooters. And maybe it all started with like a cool Garanthem video back in the day. And now how many people that started watching cool Garanthem stuff, you know, like 2018, 2019 stuff, are now like really proficient shooters and stuff. And it all started because they saw a cool video and they played a video game and they went out and got a gun and they're like, oh, this is my MW2 whatever. I got this gun because it was in this game. And so I guess all this, my whole thing, my best piece of advice is, you know what? Treat yourself. Get something fun. The ammo and the training is important, but that's a lesson that you have to learn on your own. And I'm not going to preach about it to you. It's there if you want it. If you want to get really good, there's plenty of really good shooters out there you can learn from, and there's plenty of competitions to go to. But yeah, you know, the technical thing, you shouldn't go out and spend a cheap gun and ammo and training and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, that's just a lesson you got to learn on your own. So without further ado, I appreciate you guys sticking around for this video, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.